there's a very broad assumption that all retail is created equal in the eyes of bigger stories and driving eyeballs to news stories. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the what you guys are seeing on the ground in the retail space, maybe what areas you focus on, and how the last 18 months really played out for you guys, given your seat at the retail operating table.
Well, for us, I would break the retail world, and you touch on a great point, and therein lies the opportunity. I would break the retail world into basically three buckets. You have malls, which is what people generally tend to think of when they think retail. And malls are they're undergoing their own thing over there. And ultimately, probably a third will survive and two-thirds should be bulldozed and kind of just transitioned into something else. For example, there's one that I pass every night on my drive home, which has been torn down and is now an Amazon last mile fulfillment center.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of class over there is going to be transitioned into something else. And just as 50 years ago, retail transitioned from urban environments to the suburbs, which are kind of represented by the indoor shopping malls, they are now transitioning into the next thing. The second bucket I would call would be the power centers, the big outdoor shopping centers with full of the big boxes. And with that, there was already transition at play there. They sell hard and soft goods, and those are the people that are getting hit hardest by the internet. And it's just a fact. And so they were kind of, busy struggling, trying to figure out, you can have a 60,000 foot box that wants to figure out how they can live within 35,000 feet. And so what the pandemic did to them is it simply accelerated an underlying trend dramatically. And so whatever impact the pandemic has had on power centers was already at play. It just got accelerated. Now, one fact to hang on to for those that are crying that retail as we know it is now dead or is going to die is that clicks and mortar beat clicks and it beats mortars. And that's as evidenced by Amazon this past week taking two Whole Foods stores and converting them to that system they have where you just pick up something and walk out with it. It's a cashierless store. I haven't seen one yet. But that is, kind of to point to as clicks and mortar is the ultimate thing that everybody's shooting for is how do these two things work together and what's the perfect equilibrium of those. And so what the internet has forced is for traditional brick retailers to really up their game and get better at this, or else you're not going to survive. And so you go through you go through the pandemic and you got a bunch of these big power centers around there. And the fact of the matter is you can probably make some money buying power centers right now. The brokerage world is going to make money helping all these leases kind of get redone. And it sounds easy reducing some big box store from 60,000 feet to 35,000 feet. It's not. You just can't divide the space in half. That's expensive. So they're going to have to move to another space. And so there will be some real business to be had in this. But as an investor, it's going to be you could probably make a pretty good return with power centers because you're going to be able to buy them cheap right now because of all of the chaos in that sector. But it's going to be a painful thing betwixt here and there. And so the reward will be there financially, but the operators are going to have to be really good at what they do because it's going to be a long, hard slog. And the second thing behind that is that what is the real credit quality of the large retail tenants? I think there's some real credit players out there. I also think it's just something you need to be careful and be very intentional about when you assume that a credit tenant is in fact a credit tenant. The third bucket, if you will, would be what we call service centers or neighborhood centers. And those are where we tend to play. And it's just what we know. And that would be the unanchored neighborhood centers. And they are primarily service providers. They, think of the one near your house is what I tell folks. Think of, the Mexican restaurant, the local PT guy, the dry cleaner, although there are less and less of those. The dock in a box would be in there. the UPS store would be in there. They are service providers to people. And that, heading into the pandemic, I would have said their primary value draw, if you will, or value prop was that they were internet resistant, that people, stores in these centers need people. You have to come in to do it. You have to come in to get your nails done. You have to come in to get your hair cut. You have to come in for your physical therapy. The second thing that has come out of this is that these tenants were remarkably resilient during the pandemic. And that is not something that was obvious at the front end, because it was the restaurants, it was the things that people had to come in to do. Those stores were forced to shut down. And what happened was that they learned how to do it on carryout. They learned how to do more with less. And so they adapted.